Trinidad Chambliss was not supposed to become one of the strangest quarterback stories in the 2027 National Football League draft. He was not a five-star. He was not a national recruit. He was not the next famous quarterback name being pushed toward the top of the board before he ever played a college snap. He was a zero-star recruit from Grand Rapids, Michigan. No major Division I offers, no massive recruiting spotlight, no easy path into the national conversation. And that is what makes this story feel different. Because by 2026, Chambliss had already gone from overlooked high school quarterback to Division II national champion to SEC breakout star to courtroom eligibility battle to one of the most unique wildcards in the 2027 quarterback class. That is not a normal draft path. That is a movie. And now the question is not just whether Trinidad Chambliss had a great college season. The question is whether one of college football's wildest journeys can become a real National Football League draft rise. That is the tension, because production is not the issue anymore. Chambliss has production. In 2024 at Ferris State, he threw for 2,925 yards, 26 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. Then he ran for 1,019 yards and 25 more touchdowns, 51 total touchdowns, a Division II national championship, a Harlan Hill Trophy finalist level season. Then he moved up to Ole Miss, moved into the SEC, and produced again. In 2025, he completed 66.1% of his passes for 3,937 yards, 22 touchdowns, and only 3 interceptions. He added 527 rushing yards and 8 more touchdowns, nearly 4,500 total yards, 30 total touchdowns, 3 interceptions on 445 passing attempts. That is not just a good stat line. That is a quarterback forcing people to pay attention. But the National Football League draft is not only about what a quarterback did, it is about what the league believes will translate. That is where Chambliss becomes fascinating, because his story gives evaluators 2 different arguments. One side says, look at the production, look at the ball security, look at the mobility, look at the leap from Division II to the SEC. Look at the way he handled big games. The other side says, slow down. He is not the biggest quarterback. He is not viewed as having elite arm strength. He still has questions about full field progression work, processing speed, and whether the Ole Miss system helped create the efficiency. That is why 2026 matters so much. Chambliss did not just earn another season. He fought for it. And that courtroom chapter is what turns this from a normal prospect profile into a FootballRealm story. Before Ole Miss, before the legal battle, before the draft debate, there was Ferris State. Chambliss arrived there in 2021 and redshirted. He did not become the instant face of the program. He developed, he waited, he got limited action early. Then in 2024, he took over. And when he took over, the entire offense changed. He became a true dual threat problem. He could throw efficiently, but the rushing production made him different. More than 1,000 rushing yards, 25 rushing touchdowns. He was not just escaping pressure, he was finishing drives. Ferris State went 14-1 and won the Division II national championship. In the title game against Wildest State, the Bulldogs won 49-14. That was the kind of ending that usually defines a small school legacy. But for Chambliss, it became the beginning of a much bigger question. Could this work somewhere else? That question followed him into the transfer portal. Ole Miss made sense because the offense could use his mobility, his efficiency, and his ability to create conflict with both his arm and his legs. But there is a massive difference between producing at Division II and walking into the SEC. The speed changes, the size changes, the windows change, the pressure changes. A quarterback can dominate at a lower level and still get exposed when the athletes across from him look different every week. That is why the first Ole Miss start mattered. Against Arkansas on September 13th, 2025, Chambliss threw for 353 yards and a touchdown. He ran for 62 yards and 2 more touchdowns, 415 total yards. That was not a quiet debut. That was a statement that the Ferris State production was not just a small school illusion. He kept building. Against Mississippi State, He threw for 359 yards, 4 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Then came the playoff stage. Against Tulane in the first round, he completed 23 of 29 passes for 282 yards and a touchdown. Then, in the Sugar Bowl against Georgia, he threw for around 362 yards and 2 touchdowns in a 39-34 upset win. He was named Sugar Bowl Offensive Most Valuable Player. That matters, because every draft story needs a moment where production meets pressure. For Chambliss, Georgia was that moment. Not because one game solves every question, it does not, but because if a quarterback goes from Division II to the SEC and then performs in a playoff win against Georgia, the conversation has to change. By the end of 2025, Chambliss had won SEC Newcomer of the Year from the coaches. He won the C. Spire Connerly Trophy. He earned all SEC recognition. He was a Manning Award finalist, a Maxwell Award semifinalist, a Walter Camp Player of the Year semifinalist, a Davey O'Brien Award semifinalist, and finished 8th in Heisman voting. That is not a small story. That is a quarterback who forced himself onto the national stage. Real quick, if you're loving this deep dive, hit the like button and subscribe so you never miss another player journey. Then came the eligibility fight. Chambliss sought an extra year of eligibility connected to a medical hardship waiver from his time at Ferris State, tied to a respiratory condition in 2022. The NCAA denied the waiver. For a lot of players, that could have been the end of the road. Instead, the story moved to court. In February 2026, a Mississippi state court granted a temporary injunction that prevented the NCAA from enforcing his ineligibility for the 2026 season. The NCAA appealed. Then around March 27, 2026, the Mississippi Supreme Court denied the NCAA's petition, keeping the ruling in place and allowing Chambliss to play one more season at Ole Miss. That is the courtroom quarterback, not as a gimmick, as the reason this 2027 draft story even exists. Without that ruling, Chambliss may not get another year of high-level tape. Without another year, evaluators may be left with one massive SEC season, one small school background, and a lot of unanswered questions. Now, he gets the proving ground. And that proving ground is everything. Because right now, Chambliss is not being treated like a locked-in first-round quarterback. That is important to say clearly. He is a wild card. Some early boards place him in the day 2 or early day 3 range. Some outlets see him as a possible riser. Some are intrigued by the production, mobility, and decision-making. Others are more skeptical because of arm strength, size, age, processing questions, and whether the Ole Miss system helped elevate the stat line. That is the real draft debate. Chambliss is not Arch Manning. He is not Dante Moore. He is not the polished 5-star story with years of national expectation behind him. He is the production case, the efficiency case, the mobility case, the quarterback who keeps winning at every level and now has to prove the traits are enough for the next one. His strengths are easy to understand. He protects the football. 3 interceptions in an SEC season is hard to ignore. He adds value as a runner. He can stress defenses in the red zone. He has poise from high-pressure games. He has shown he can move from Division II to the SEC without losing his identity. And he has already led teams deep into championship-level moments. But the concerns are also real. At around 6 foot or 6'1" and just over 200 pounds, he does not have the massive frame some teams prefer. His arm is described by some scouting reports as capable, but not elite. His projection depends on whether he can win with anticipation, timing, rhythm, mobility, and decision-making against faster professional windows. The National Football League will ask different questions. Can he throw outside the numbers with enough velocity? Can he work full field progressions? Can he handle pressure without leaning too heavily on movement? Can he win from the pocket when defenses take away the easy answers? Can he prove that 2025 was not a system-driven spike? That is what 2026 has to answer. And that is why the court ruling created both opportunity and pressure. Chambliss gets another year, another SEC schedule, another chance to show the draft world that the production was not a one-season surprise, but he also has to validate the fight. If he improves, his stock can rise fast, because quarterbacks always move when the league believes there is starter upside. If he regresses, the questions get louder. That is the beauty of this story. It is not clean. It is not obvious. It is not a top prospect being handed a spotlight. It is a quarterback who had to build the spotlight brick by brick. Grand Rapids, zero-star recruit, Ferris State, Division II national champion, transfer portal, Ole Miss, SEC breakout, Sugar Bowl stage, courtroom ruling, one more season, one more chance. A 2027 National Football League draft door that might not have existed without the strangest chapter of his career. Can Trinidad Chambliss turn one of college football's wildest journeys into a real draft rise? That is the question now, because he already proved he can be overlooked. He already proved he can win small. He already proved he can produce big. Now he has to prove the National Football League should believe the story is more than incredible. It has to be translatable. That's the story in Football Realm. If you love deep player journeys, hit subscribe and join the realm. Drop your thoughts below. Who do you want profiled next?